Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Migration on TV360 Nigeria. I am Oyi Adekunle. According to the United Nations, more than 40 million people globally are victims of modern slavery, such as forced labor, forced marriage, and human trafficking. Now, of this estimated figure, 1 in 4 victims are said to be children, and women and girls account for 71% of the victims. On the occasion of the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said slavery is not simply a matter of history, but what is still being practiced today under a different guise. Now, how real or bad is the situation? I'm now being joined on the program via Skype by Omotola Fawunmi, the Executive Director of Rebirth Orb Africa, that's in the United States. Of course, Omotola is also a migration expert. Thank you very much for joining me on the program, Omotola.
Thank you for having me, Oyi.
Now, when we say slave trade has evolved, give us like an overview now of how, despite being abolished in the books, which we all know, the Illicit Act has just returned under a different guise.
Thank you. I don't like to call it modern slavery because it seems to me the slavery really never ended. But for being correct, we'll just say, well, modern slavery. Truth is, slavery really never ended. It only took a different form. If we understand the origins were purely economic. Historically, I think in 6800 BC, when the first city-state of Mesopotamia came into being, that was when we had the very first set of slaves. And so all through the years, free labor, unpaid labor, has continued to be a very significant part of production. Now, what we see, or we refer to currently as modern slavery, is not exactly something that has been hidden. I mean, it's not exactly something that is new. Only it's been amplified now because we have the media and we have people reporting different types of slavery that we have currently. We have domestic servitude, we have sex slavery, we have forced, we have that's relatively unknown, organ harvesting. And all of these types of slavery are still prevalent as at 2020. It's across the entire world. So from Africa to Asia to Europe. The only thing I can say is that more than half of the human beings being traded as slaves happen to be Africans.
And that's really terrible. So what factors would you say is driving this for us now? Because whether we like it or not, these things have consequences on the economy, on basically the development of Africa. What factors would you say is driving this modern slavery in Africa?
Modern slavery in Africa, primarily, again, it is economic. Remember where I started. It's economic. A lot of the people who are taken out of, let's move back a little bit. A lot of the slaves who were taken out of Africa to work across the various plantations across the world were moved there because they would be working for free, producing things that would be sold in the markets. What's happened now is because the economic situation in Africa is really bad across various countries, and I can give you various statistics for various countries. Somebody promises an African that you would have a better quality of life in a different country, whether it is in Asia or Europe or the Middle East, which I'm very familiar with, or even here in America. Now, a lot of these people are hired, sourced, recruited by very close family members, not different from what happened during slavery and slave trade. A family member, a church leader, a mosque leader, a trusted community leader sells an opportunity of a better economic situation to a potential victim. Telling this victim, you would earn $1,000 or $2,000 a month if you go work as a teacher. That's the easiest route, as a teacher in any of these countries. If you're going to Europe, they tell you you're going to work as a skilled laborer or a dressmaker or a hairdresser. So it looks like something, it's a skill you have. Unfortunately, once you leave the shores of Nigeria and get to the other side, you then find out a different situation or a different scenario. And I can give you a practical story of one of the victims we've been working with over the last 1 year. In Nigeria, she was recruited by an officer in Spain. Are you with me?
Yes, I'm with you.
Okay. She was told she was going to work as a hairdresser in Spain. Unfortunately, because many people do not fully understand the migration process, she, for example, did not know she required a passport to travel. And she made that trip from Abuja down to Lagos. And only when she arrived Lagos did her recruiter tell her, oh, the person who is buying your ticket is in Cote d'Ivoire. And then she made the road trip from Nigeria to Cote d'Ivoire, arriving in Cote d'Ivoire, still with the promise of going to Spain. Unfortunately, she was actually being recruited as a sex slave for the lady in Cote d'Ivoire. Arriving in Cote d'Ivoire, the person who brought her from Nigeria dropped her at the lady's place and left, and that was the last time she saw that recruiter. This lady would end up having to work as a sex slave for 2 years, from October 2017 up till November 2019, when we then got in touch with her. In that period, she was required to sleep with 15 men per day over a 2-year period. So just imagine that scenario. And every money that was made was remitted to the madam who she was working with. When she returned with nothing. When we sent people to bring her back from Cote d'Ivoire to Nigeria, it was just her, having worked for 2 years.
Wow, that's really serious. I mean, working in this area, and you said earlier, you talked about domestic servitude, and that most of these people who recruit, so to speak, are trusted community leaders, trusted persons that will appear to you as maybe friends or family and all of that. There's also a thin line now, aside going outside the country, even within Nigeria, for instance, we see interstate movement of people. Now, where do you now draw the line between, we have uncles say, okay, just come and work with me, he's my uncle, I'm moving to Lagos from Abuja or from Kano to work with my uncle or something like that. Where do we draw the line now that you're working, where you're working and being a slave, or where you're being treated as a slave while you're working, or slavery in the workplace now, if I can put it like that?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question. I would say in response to that people need to ask questions and be willing to engage in difficult conversations, even with family members. The reason why it's easy for a lot of this recruitment to happen is because we trust our family members. We trust people who are close to us. And somehow we don't get to probe or ask, where would I be working? How would I be working? What are the hours I will be working for? How much do I get paid? We just assume that this person would be kind or be nice to me. So I think that when parents are handing over their kids to an uncle, an aunt, whoever that person is, I'm speaking now, they need to ask the very difficult questions. Is she engaged? Is she working so you get to pay her school fees? Let it be clear to everyone why we are engaging in it's a contract, and let it be explicitly discussed. Let there be clarifications. How many hours would she work? She has to work. If she's working for her uncle, is she employed properly? Does she have an engagement letter? Does she get the same benefits that other people who work with this uncle get? I think if these questions are asked and people don't feel, oh, do you mean you don't trust me? Because then we put up that defense. I will take care of your daughter. I'm not saying you won't take care of her. I just want to be clear. I think if people can be open to these conversations and not be afraid to ask the difficult questions, they might be able to see that this person might be a fraudulent recruiter and not necessarily a benefactor.
And Omotola, you'll agree with me that in several parts of the world now, there seems to be like a tense security situation, at least in many countries. Insurgency is a major issue now for Africa now. Let's look at Nigeria. In the north, for instance, we've had cases where children were recruited and used as child soldiers. This, I believe, should also be a form of modern slavery, or is it not?
Oh, it is. It is. Forced recruitment of child soldiers is a form of trafficking and modern slavery. Because again, the issue about slavery is against your will. Slavery is it's taking away your right to choose how you want to engage, what you want to do. So yes, recruiting child soldiers. And I would agree with you completely, because everywhere nations are breaking down, or there are wars, there are insurgencies, there are acts of terrorism, many of those communities didn't exactly prepare for that breakdown of law and order. And so child soldiers are recruited against their will, of course, to, oh my God, this is painful, against their will, to fight a battle they know nothing about. So it's not just the recruitment, it's the fact that the person fighting has no understanding of why he or she is even engaged in this war. So a child is just following orders. A child more often than not might be a victim or collateral damage at the end of this war. So these are real issues that need to be discussed, discouraged, and people who are in leadership need to be held accountable. There's a lot of indoctrination that goes into forcing the child to get into a war he or she knows nothing about.
No, Omotola, we'll just take a short break here. We'll take a breather, and when we return, we'll continue with this conversation. We'll go on a short break here, and when we return, we'll continue discussing the evolution of modern slavery across the world. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. We're still talking about the evolution of modern slavery across the world and in Nigeria, of course, in Africa as well. And I still have on the program Omotola Fawunmi, the Executive Director of Rebirth Hub Africa, and who is, of course, a migration expert as well. Omotola, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Now, we've talked about slavery taking a different turn. We talk about different guys, but people don't necessarily know. How do you know that, okay, this thing I'm engaged in is a form of modern slavery? So let's talk about this evolution now. What are some of the new forms of slavery that you have seen and that people really need to be aware of?
Thank you very much, Oyi. I think because of poverty, which is prevalent, everybody is providing you a route to escape. And these escapes are provided as in the form of jobs, opportunity for teaching, working as a sales girl, and then they provide you outrageous figures. So let me paint a scenario to you. Someone tells you you're going to earn, like I said, $1,000 or $2,000 a month, working as a teacher, teaching an Arabic boy or an Arabic person in the Middle East how to speak English. $1,000 in Nigeria, that would be about this time, maybe about 400,000 naira, which is way above the minimum wage, or even what people in the middle class earn. So it sounds like a good promise. It sounds like a good offer. Now, the process is someone who knows you have that need, opens that conversation with you. You go, oh, I'm interested. And then what happens after you're interested? He says, well, you don't need to pay for your passport. I'll fix all of that for you. They make promises that sound too good to be true. Why should someone who doesn't really know you want to be benevolent to you, as it were? What you don't know is that on the other side, there is a recruitment that has been placed. There's an advert that has been placed. So they tell you, fill this form. That form that victim usually fills is uploaded on a site, and we have several of those sites where people are listed, name, age, kind of job the person is going to be able to do. And so the buyer, or who I call the buyer, the final buyer, has made a selection, selected that person. Let's say we call the person X. So X has been selected on a website. Then the person in Nigeria, the recruiter in Nigeria, has identified X, tells X about this opportunity, fill this form, and X thinks she's going on a good, economic migration opportunity. They move, arrive at the airport. It's only at the airport, for example, that then she begins to sense something is not right. But she's not sure. She's excited. There are lots of payments that exchange hands at the immigration desk. The girls don't travel singly. Many of times they travel as a group. It's a group of 5, a group of 10, a group of 30, sometimes a group of 50, with one lead agent who is doing the bulk recruitment. On arrival to the destination country, there is another agent who is in the destination country who then takes delivery of these girls. So it's slavery. And then the person on the other side, who is the agency or agent in the destination country, then does the distribution to the various people who had made a selection on the website. Please understand that all through this process, the victim is not aware that she's a product, he or she is a product being traded. She thinks she's going on a legitimate job quest. Only on arrival there are they then told, well, you need to cut off your hair, you need to go through certain rituals. When I mean rituals, sometimes they have to bath them with all kinds of things, because according to the girls that we have had conversations with, the Arabs think that the Africans are an inferior human being to them. And so they need to do some form of cleansing for them, sometimes cutting their hair and all of that, before they are then taken to the homes where they will be working. It's only on arrival in those homes that the person who left legitimately looking for a good economic opportunity then discovers she may be getting paid $100 or $200 or less a month. The agent who found her that job already made her sign a contract of remitting 10% of whatever she earns to him. So 10% of $1,000 or $2,000 would have been $200. Now on arrival, she's going to be remitting 10%, I mean the entire amount, over a 6-month, sometimes 9-month period. So she's working for free. Sometimes many work for free for a year or two. So look at that. Even if you're earning $200 a month, you're working for 13 to 18 hours a day as a domestic slave. You have no identity. You have no bank accounts. Sometimes you have a phone, sometimes you don't have a phone. And the person who bought you, you are not aware this person had paid about $10,000 to $15,000 to the agency to recruit you. So he doesn't see you as someone who's just working. He's seeing you as a product that he bought off a website. That's the issue.
And
so
this for me
ask more questions.
This for me is really sad, because we know that at some point we had like a major issue around the North African route. That's the Sahara Desert, Libya and all of that. And then things started to shift to Middle East. And it sort of appears that these traffickers usually just keep up with trend. Once they find that this has become sort of difficult for them to work with, they switch to another route. And we've also seen, in fairness to the government now, an increase in the call for respect of human rights and all of that across the world. So what would you say that is that piece or that point that we're missing? Because these human traffickers just seem to be getting smarter by the day, and just makes it seem like this progress that we're supposed to be recording isn't just taking us anywhere.
Thank you. I would say to fix the problem, we need to understand the problem. The industry, human trafficking is not just a problem. It's a business. It's an industry. It's a $150 billion industry. And so if someone, government, individual, comes after your business, chances are you will retaliate. So government needs to understand that it is a highly organized cartel of recruitment and thrives by word of mouth. One person passes the message to another person. If you're going to tackle people like that, you need to work within the same communities that they work. So we can't, government is doing campaigns, I agree. But a typical example will be When a girl has already been recruited and has been taken to the airport, that's when she sees NAPTIP's signposts that says, say no to trafficking, beware of that. At that point in time, she's on her way out. The messages need to go to the grassroots. People need to be engaged. I'll share one example of one of the projects I had worked on, I think sometime in 2018, for a different organization where I was consulting. We worked then across just a particular area in Lagos, Lagos Island. And what we did was what you call word of mouth advocacy. We went everywhere, schools, churches, trade organizations, more than 15 markets were visited, and we help people understand this is what is modern slavery. This is how to identify a potential recruiter. This is how not to be a victim. We had a hotline that people could call. So if someone came to you and told you, oh, there is this opportunity, we had a hotline you could call, and a remote migration expert would speak to you and let you know what country are you going to, what kind of jobs are you going for, and a whole lot of questions that when you ask the recruiter, many times the recruiter gets upset because you have too much information, and then they say, well, that opportunity is no longer available for you. So I think the information gap is the key. People trust their pastors. In Nigeria, we're a very religious country, so we trust what our faith leaders tell us. We don't question it. People need to start questioning. Someone tells you they're taking you to Australia. Where in Australia are you going to be working? What's the name of the country? What's the name of, if anyone is doing a recruitment from Nigeria, they should have a website. How can I find? But a lot of people who are recruited are in inner city, in communities. I'd say in Nigeria, maybe in Osun State, Ogun, in the interland. That person doesn't have access to internet, cannot Google. For her, it's an escape or an opportunity to leave the country. So we need to take the campaign where the people are, so that if someone comes with a lot of money to buy you, you can say, no, can you provide me this information? How will I be able to speak to my daughter? There are markets, I can tell you for free, in Lagos. The head of the markets, people known as the Yaloja, is the one who is recruiting, taking people to Saudi Arabia, taking people to Egypt, Cairo, to Dubai. And another thing is that when victims return, many of the victims are unwilling to share the story because of the shame, because we will shame them. But I think that if more victims are able to share and document their stories, they may be able to explain to potential victims what signs to look for. So the campaign needs to be holistic. We could use electronic media. We should also, during that project I mentioned, we were on radio every week talking about it, asking people, calling with your questions. So it has to be a multi-centered approach to ending it. There isn't a single approach to ending modern slavery or human trafficking. People need to see the signs. At the airports, air hostesses, for example, need to be trained to spot someone who might be a potential victim. Usually that person is not sure, has never traveled before. He's excited to be traveling, but is a bit shy and quite unsure. He's looking for whoever is picking her up at the airport because she's just meeting a stranger who is taking her to meet another stranger. Some people might have been saved if someone just reached out. I think NAPTIP needs to have a desk at all the international airports. That's just for NAPTIP. But any other country, the agency in charge of trafficking needs to have a desk where they can spot who might be a victim and who might not just be an independent traveler. If you ask questions from the victims, the actual victims, at the airport, you find out they have no clue where they are going to. They just know someone is picking them up.
Sorry to cut you here, Omotola. Lastly now, before I let you go, I believe you are in a position to give us this information. Now, what are some of the frequently asked questions that you have received, and how would you provide answers to it, particularly the signs to look out for so that people do not fall prey to modern slavery now?
Thank you. People need to ask, where am I? What is the job? What is the name of the organization recruiting? How are we going to get there? So, for example, are you going by air? Are you going by road? Somebody was told to come to the airport only for her to be put in a vehicle, taking her to Sokoto, having to go by road to Libya. But she didn't know this. People need to ask, what kind of job is it? And even do research online. Is that industry that I'm being asked to come to, is it really a need in that country? Are there other people in that, are there citizens that can also fill in those roles? If we don't ask those questions, what's the cost of immigration? How many other people are going in that direction? But people need to ask questions. Who am I working for? Why am I being recruited? How much will I be paid? And what's the proof? Who else has done that job? Who can I ask? Can I speak to a former employee or something? But people need to ask questions.
So basically, if I can just summarize what you said, it would be that really, literally, knowledge is power. But thank you very much, Omotola, for speaking to us on Talking Migration. Thank you very much for giving us this very vital information. And I believe that many people would pick 1 or 2 lessons from this. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, that was Omotola Fawunmi, the Executive Director of Rebirth Hub Africa, and who's also a migration expert, speaking to us there on the evolution of modern slavery across Africa and how or signs to look out for so as not to fall victim. On that note, we'll call it a wrap on this episode of Talking Migration. Well, thank you very much for watching. I'm Oyi Adekunle, and I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.